This is just what long-term relationships look like, but the resentment builds anyway. It leaks out in small arguments in a shorter temper.
Welcome back to MUSE on the Mic. I'm Riley.
And I'm Emily. Thanks everybody for joining us on another great episode here at MUSE on the Mic. We're diving into a controversial, not talked about, affects everybody conversation today. Mm-hmm. And who better than your favorite rub and tug owners to bring you this topic, because we hear about it every day from clients. Mm-hmm. Riley, what are we getting into? What are we talking about today?
Well, like you said, we're just having a conversation. We want to break the silence on this topic, and we're talking about sexless marriage. And it's a statistic that I think is underreported, but actually increasing severely since the 1990s. I might even say it's an epidemic. And I think what's the worst part of this is these people, and I won't just say men, because sometimes it's women, are suffering. It's damaging, but the worst part is they're suffering in silence. So let's talk about it.
I love that, because that's what we love to do. Smash the stigmas, break down the barriers. And I hate to say it, but sexless marriages fuel and fund the sex trade industry. If there were healthy, vigorously sexual relationships happening in marriages everywhere, hookers would be very slow. Strip clubs would be a lot more boring, and slow season would last a lot longer. It would really be such a different landscape across the board. And that can be really difficult for some people to digest, because there's a portion of people, I think on both sides, you said it, like there's men and there's women. But if you're the one who's not interested in sex, or you're withholding the sex, they tend to get offended by the thought of there are these scandalous women out here ready to sleep with your husband just as soon as you don't pay attention. And we're kind of here to go, yeah. So what are you going to do about it? Because it is a problem that can't be fixed outside by a sex worker, but it can absolutely be band-aided by one. It can absolutely encourage a synchronicity of events that could eventually lead to him deciding to leave, or him continuing to have affairs of some sense for a very long period of time. Some people see the same sex worker for 10 years plus. That's a relationship. And so it's not nurturing what's going on at home. It's not resolving what's going on at home. And as much as we are pro sex work, and the fact that it can help a struggling marriage, it can help through a medical challenge or things like this, it also is the Band-Aid that keeps a lot of people staying in these unhappy relationships and home situations, and unfortunately have to outsource intimacy. And that is very, very sad to me. I've been in it myself, and it's not fun. It's not something that's also easily fixed. But when left unattended, it gets worse and worse and more resentful by the day. And I think a lot of people just don't want to talk about it. If Oprah were back on TV, I would be like blowing up their emails and like knocking on their studio door, being like, we need to talk about this, because nobody's talking about this. And I know you brought some stats on how many people this affects. And I think we're going to both argue that the stats are wrong, and that it's actually a lot higher. So what do you got? What'd you find? Because,
well, I think, like I said when I was introing the topic, these stats are only increasing dramatically since the 90s. And I'm not quite sure as to the why. I don't know if that's just more economic pressure or social media, maybe like distractions. I'm not quite sure the why on the topic, but it is something that's really increasing. And I think, like you said, these stats that aren't really too clear and were a little bit hard to find, I think should actually be doubled. And I think in Canada, they were saying 19% of Canadians rarely or never have sex, which I'm going to call that, let's call it 20. And then let's double it, because that's what's reported. So let's call this 40%. So we're nearing half the people, married couples in Canada aren't having sex. And that's like, it is such a widespread issue. And I think the important piece, like you mentioned before, is although we lean heavily on sex work, that sex workers can, we save the world, we save everyone from everything. This isn't the save. It really isn't, because it's not fixing the damage that's being done every night when that woman or that man go home. It's not solving any problems. So that's kind of the concerning part, is as much as we are a resource, we're not actually fixing anything for these people. They have to take that control themselves.
They absolutely have to. It is without a doubt. And yet, in some ways, we can boost the confidence of the person. We can nurture, we can care, we can attend to their emotions in the moment, but we're not there to hold their hand through those fights and those rejection nights and those repeated cycles and those moments where you kind of look at the calendar, oh my God, we haven't done it since Christmas. And it snowballs so quickly, just like life snowballs, right? Life gets busy, but life gets busier. Oh, we have young kids. Next thing you know, blink, and they're out for university, moving out the house, and you're looking at your partner going, who the fuck are you? And nobody knows anybody and even what they're into at that point. And chances are both sides have had affairs at that point as well. So it can be such a unspoken pain that people carry with them. And it's amazing to me. I would argue those stats are way higher than that. I can look back on my career as just a sex worker, forget even owning the business. Of my clientele, which included all nationalities, all age ranges, all walks of life, all financial means ranges, I would say 80% of the clients that came in were married and unhappy with their sex life. Now, maybe not officially sexless, but very much deprived, very much lacking connection, or it's forced intimacy in the sense that it feels like an obligation. It's not enthusiastic whatsoever. And then, no offense to the wives at home, but put in a pro who's got all the moves, and her craft is to perfect all of that stuff. You almost don't stand a chance, because sex workers are so good at sex. Like, that's what we do, that you're now almost like lining things up that are undefeatable. Like, I dare you to challenge me at the Sex Olympics. Like, I will win gold every time. And it's such a situation you can get stuck in if you're financially stuck, if you're waiting for the kids to grow up, which you and I don't believe in staying for the kids in general, but it literally, your life can pass you by. And before you know it, you're still in this same situation, and you're a retiree and you've been married for 47 years. And the last time you guys had sex more than twice a year was when you were making the babies, like, or only on the sandals vacation once a year, or we do it obligatory on our birthdays and our anniversary, and that's all we do. Sexless marriages are defined normally, at least by most psychologists and sexologists, as 6 times or less per year, averaging once every 2 months. And I'm telling you, I know a bunch of people in sexless marriages that would be thrilled with every 2 months, because the stretches have been so long. Yeah. And so dry without. And then it makes any attention you get that much more exciting. Like, you may not normally fall in love with the mailman, but it's the first man that's paid attention to you in how long that you're suddenly like dreamy eyed at the guy. It can create opportunity for affair. And I think sex work is the cleaner option because there's usually not emotions. But if you've been neglected that much, it's so hard not to have emotions about it. It is really difficult. But I also want to show everyone a video that I came across and kind of spear off that and talk about it. I was randomly watching something on YouTube. One of those little ads come up that interrupt every good video. No offense, YouTube. Hi, we love you. Keep us monetized. Thanks. But it caught my ear immediately. And I remember watching it. It was about a sexless situation, and praying, being like, I need to see this ad again, because you can't rewind an ad on YouTube. I was like, I hope I see this again and catch it right at the beginning to press record, because I'd love to bring this to the pod. And I managed to find it. It's an ad for a company. We're not giving them any free advertising. But they offer some sort of emotional support. I don't think it's quite counseling, but it's some sort of therapy program that's supposed to help you through some of these types of situations. I went on their YouTube page. They tackle a number of different mental health topics. But this one specifically is from a man's perspective about being in a sexless marriage that before you know it just spirals into one. And I don't know about you, but when I first saw it, it punched me right in the gut. And I was like, this is the story of 90% of the men that we meet every single day. So let's watch this and we'll talk on the other side of it.
Sexless marriages have one thing in common: a man who grew up being a nice guy. There's a version of marriage nobody warns you about, the one where you live in the same house, raise the same kids, share the same bed, and feel completely alone. She's not cruel, she's not cheating, she just stopped seeing you somewhere between the mortgage and the school pickups. You became a co-parent, a provider, a task-sharing partner, but not a man she desires. You can't remember the last time she touched you first, the last time she looked at you the way she used to, the last time intimacy felt like something she wanted, not something she agreed to. And when you bring it up, you're making it a big deal, or she's just tired, or there's always something more important that needs her attention first. So you stop bringing it up, you swallow it, you tell yourself this is just what long-term relationships look like, but the resentment builds anyway. It leaks out in small arguments, in a shorter temper, in the distance you start creating, because being close to someone who doesn't want you back hurts more than being alone. This doesn't get fixed by trying harder or initiating more. It gets fixed by understanding why you've been willing to accept so little for so long, and where that pattern actually started. Just 15 minutes a day with Lylan can change everything. In 1 week you'll start feeling unstoppable. In 2 weeks you'll rewire your brain and regain focus without the constant pressure. In 4 weeks you'll wonder why you didn't start sooner. Take the 3-minute quiz to uncover your hidden trauma triggers and unlock your true potential.
So that's a lot, right? It's a lot to take in, and yet something, like I said, we hear every day. For those that have never paid any attention, it's probably all new information. And I bet there's a lot of men watching right now that are like, yep, that's my life. And I think that's why it jumped out to me so much. I have been in a sexless live-in long-term relationship for many, many years, almost a decade, and it almost killed me emotionally and physically. It literally drained the life out of me. So I'm always a little sensitive to it and I guess recognize it. But anyways, at first I wasn't sure, will I see this ad again? I'm not just going to sit and keep watching YouTube. I didn't Google anything that preempted this company to show me this ad. So I wasn't even watching anything about it. It was not like I was watching some relationship show or something. It was like a music video or something totally random. And so I obviously hopped on Google and went to go search. Do they have a YouTube page? Is this video also on their Instagram or some way like that? I'm sure the quality isn't the best on the video. It was a screen record because I just happened to see it again. But during my search, I came across one woman's post on Instagram that had a long form version. So it was the same song, the same jingle, different cartoon. And to be honest, I didn't like the cartoon as much in this long form one. It really depicted the woman as just a miserable bitch, which sometimes is the situation, but is not always the situation. No. Plus, most people become miserable through a chain of events, not just by accident one day, right? So context aside. But initially, the woman showed a little clip of it, and then she was arguing for the side of the person who's no longer interested in intimacy. So I browsed her page for a second, and she's an asexual person who advocates for asexual information. And I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of why you're coming at from this angle. But anyways, I sent her a DM and I was like, do you actually have a link to this commercial because I'm trying to find it. I have a podcast. I want to talk about it, blah, blah, blah. And turns out you can find like archives of people's ads, companies' ads on any platform. So it took me a bit of a rabbit hole because she had sent me the Instagram link and I wanted the YouTube version. Found the video, screen recorded the video, and like, here we are. But I initially, my reaction was to be defensive against this woman saying like, well, you're completely entitled to not want to ever have sex again. Consent is consent. And I don't disagree with that argument. And I understand there are people that partway through a romantic journey may discover they're gay, they're lesbian, they're trans, they're asexual. Her argument didn't leave any room for the fact that you have changed the terms of an agreement or a contract between two people without the consent of the other party. And the comments were filled with, obviously she has an audience and a lot of people that were equally asexual. And they were like, lots of people are happy without sex. And I was like, well, wait a minute, because those that are not interested in sex and are asexual, that have no desire or physical draw towards that feeling, partner with each other. And I know that's not easy to do and not always easy to find. But to throw it at a sexually, especially a high sex drive person, 18 years into your marriage, to suddenly decide, I don't want to participate in this one piece. And if you ask me, that is the one piece that differentiates a romantic, intimate relationship from all other relationships. You and I are very romantical as friends. We get each other trinkets and presents. We celebrate each other. We talk every day. Hi, how was your day? We'll cuddle if we have to. Like, we'll do all the things. Women especially are like that with their friendships. It doesn't replace the desire for sexuality if you have desire for sexuality. And so I think it's a little deceiving to say, well, I'm allowed to not. Sure, on a Tuesday, but not forever. And where is the compromise then to accommodate both sides? Maybe the high drive person needs to lower a little, but I'm sorry, other person needs to step it up. And if you're not a compatible match, then don't be together. Don't drag out this situation, because it does kill the person inside that desires it. It is so damaging to self-esteem, to confidence even to get out there again after the relationship. It makes you gun shy to initiate. It makes you embarrassed. It makes you feel shame about your own sexuality. And it makes you question your legitimacy in that relationship. Do I have a place here? Am I even owed love? Like, it makes you question everything. And it's such a dark place to be in when you're really second guessing. It can make you second guess your ability as a father, or am I even good enough to be the CEO of my company if I can't even get my own wife to suck my dick? Like, it makes you literally just crumble from the inside out. And I wouldn't wish it on anyone. So yeah, I didn't beef with this woman. It's her world, and I am no expert in asexuality at all. I would never claim to be. But that part of the argument really grinds my gears. And so while she was bashing this ad, I was like, I love this ad, because finally someone's saying the thing. They're saying the thing out loud, and how he feels in those moments where he's driving from work or he's scrolling his phone, taking a shit on the toilet. It's the in-between moments. It's not even the rejection point. It is all the silence that happens in the everyday that literally darkens your world minute by minute. It is just so heavy. So I applaud this company for bringing attention to it, and how relatable it is to what we deal with every single day. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's different types of sex, and I know we've talked about this before, but I think the compassionate sex is what maybe it starts as that, and then that gets lost along the way, because there's certainly times where we are not as interested or as horny or aroused or have the mental brain space to really be invested in the experience, but there's still understanding you have a partner. And they need this. They need it not just for the orgasm, but for their mental health, for how they view themselves and their self-worth. But I think the lack of communication with all topics is really the part that gets me, because I'm not going to blame anyone that's in this situation. But I think it's about communicating it right when you start to notice a bit of a habit. Because the minute you swallow, your thoughts or like your pride or whatever it is, and don't vocalize it, it becomes a habit. And once it becomes a habit, it becomes your normal, and it's very hard to break. And I think it would even be difficult for, let's say it's the man in this case, to even bring it up. It's been a year. Why are you talking about it now? This is what we do. But I think you're right. When you go into a contract, a marriage, a relationship, and this is what was happening prior, and this is what happened after we got married. Why did it stop? And there was no communication of that. And that is the tricky part. And maybe it's the communication that, honey, maybe you should swing outside of our marriage. Maybe you should see a sex worker. Maybe I need to see a sex therapist. But that communication piece is what I think starts that silence. And once they get stuck in it, there's just so much shame for them to vocalize where they're at. And it's terribly sad, I feel, for anyone in that situation.
It truly is.
You want to go deeper? You want to go all the way? Let's go deep throat.
Good night, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Deep Throat, here with your favorite sexologist, Emily Muse. Thank you so much for joining me again tonight. I love these Sunday night talks we have. I'm about to take you on a ride to something that is often rarely talked about, but suddenly a trending hashtag in the sex, BDSM, and adult curiosity industry, all through sex education and every avenue. I've been seeing this. So what am I talking about? Free use. Loaded statement. So what is free use? What does that even mean? Exactly what it says. If you are in some sort of dom, sub, or power dynamic sexual relationship, connection, or aspect of your romantic relationships or your sex work time, there is something called free use, which is a mutually agreed upon agreement that the answer is always yes. Juicy, isn't it? However, I'm here to tell you about all of the exceptions and the rules on how to do it safely, because it can be one of the most erotic and inviting and enticing dynamics and agreements to come to with a sexual partner. But as with everything in life, there's always a caveat, there's always some fine print, and there's always a time and place for everything. Although, push the boundaries of appropriate. Now I'm going to start us off with just a short video of a woman explaining the ins and outs of her dynamic and how they kind of wandered into free use and how they navigate it. Let's watch.
The number one question I'm asked as a submissive in a 24/7 DS relationship is, but what if you don't want to? There's some variety, of course. With free use, it's what if you're not in the mood. With our appearance rules, it's what if you can't be bothered. And sometimes it's what if you're sick, what if you're tired. But the answer is always the same. Because although there's flexibility in our dynamic for times, like illness, where my ability to serve is limited, often not wanting to is the point. Not wanting to is, in fact, what I want. To be pushed, to be challenged, to be used and useful. To feel my focus on my own wants dwindle and be eclipsed by what my partner asks of me. Sometimes it's because self-discipline isn't enough to live the life I want. I want to sit on the couch and eat McDonald's, not cook a healthy meal from scratch. But if I do the harder option, it is more rewarding. External discipline gives me a life I cannot access on my own. Sometimes it's about a deeper need to explore dark desires and tap into feelings that the surface level want is to avoid, but on another level I crave and need to face. Fear, pain, humiliation and violation, playing in the mess and ugliness of those feelings frees me from the fear and shame attached to them. It's freedom of a strange and twisted sort, but freedom all the same. My own autonomy, even my own consent, are things that pull me into my head and out of the moment. And both are important. The autonomy I exercise by choosing, chasing and embracing the life of a submissive, and the active and deeply discussed consent that underpins everything that we do. But giving myself distance from them, removing them from conscious thought, and letting myself just exist in the structure and guidance I have found, pulls me into my heart instead. So maybe the answer is this: I always want to. I always want to submit, let it take over and sink into love as a form of beautiful madness. And I never want to, because I want to not want at all. Because they want, and I am theirs, and their desires become the container that I am moulded to fill.
That sounded so enticing. Whether it's your jam or not, you can always learn a little something that you can take with you to your sex life. So what is this free use thing? How do you go about it? What does it really define itself as? And what are the nuances? Let me explain. So, a free use contract or agreement between two sexual partners is a consent agreement. It's a consent of non-consent, and yet it's not non-consensual sex. There is a very definitive line here, and what it is one partner telling the other partner that I want to be so available to you that my response is always yes, anytime, any place, anywhere.
You like that? You want more? Subscribe to the Patreon and I'll take you deep throat.
You know, it makes me think about some of our other episodes where we talk about the need, for example, for sex education. Imagine how many fewer sexless marriages there would be if people were raised with proper sex education, proper autonomy, women learning their bodies and being able to have control and power over their orgasms, meaning sex that leads to sex being more satisfying, which means you can find more compatible matches instead of, I'm convinced that so many people, they'll marry on religious match, on intellectual match, on financial match, on cultural matches, and well, he's Italian or she's Indian or whatever the thing is. And so many are mismatched sexually and then wonder why they end up in this problem later. And that's not to say that the only thing you should look for is, you know, rich and a high sex drive, although that would be a great kind of guy for a girl like me. But for others, it just wouldn't. It seems weird that we don't talk about yet accept the removal of sexuality. But what if they were like, well, I'm removing all affection, or I'm removing financial support for the household, or I'm removing all man jobs that I do. I no longer take out the garbage. I no longer do the repairs. I no longer hang the Christmas lights and mow the lawn. If there were any other piece that you would take out of a relationship, it would be a 9-alarm fire in the house. They'd be like, my marriage is crumbling. What's happening? But again, sex is this one thing that nobody will talk about. And it's the biggest problem. It's the biggest elephant. I'd say even more than money that you could have just kind of floating and hanging in the room, and it will never get better until you acknowledge it. And there are amazing sex therapists out there. There are amazing couples counselors that could work with couples to find it. But if both parties are carrying, you know, childhood sexual shame or, you know, trauma and things like that, and you've never talked about it, it can be so many obstacles to get to that middle point together where you're in a satisfying agreement of intimacy. And it's such a sad thing to me that people will go their whole life and never even, it's like never going to a gym or never breaking a sweat or never reading a book to even see what your mind can do. You're never even testing what this relationship could be or what you might seek in a new partner if you learn that this one isn't the one for you or what have you. It could make you a better client to sex workers. It could mean that the women nowadays that are choosing not to date find better gentlemen on a vacation. Like, it can just lead to so many more satisfying, consenting sexual scenarios where people are learning about their bodies and learning about themselves. But there's also those moments where you may not be in the mood, but by the time you're done an orgasm, you're like, that was exactly what I needed. Yeah. And people avoid that point as well because they become defensive and like spiteful and bitter, and just the confusion that comes along when your intimate partner is no longer intimate. It literally changes absolutely every piece. So I found a couple blog posts that I definitely want to read. One from a woman and one from a man that kind of give equal yet different perspective on these same kind of scenarios. So they were from Facebook. I won't read the whole darn things because they're a bit long, but I just want to get the gist across. So female in a sexless marriage / need advice. I've been married to my husband for almost 25 years. We have 3 kids, 2 in college and the youngest in middle school. For most of our marriage, sex has basically been non-existent. In the beginning, I knew I wanted intimacy more than he did. See, mismatched. But I never realized it would always be like this. The first few years, sex happened maybe every few months. Now it's down to once every couple of years. I've begged, I've pleaded, I've offered just about anything, asked for therapy, suggested doctors. Nothing changes. At this point, the idea of sex with him feels forced and like pity sex. Heartbreaking, right? Which just makes it feel worse. Over the years, I feel like I've given up so much of myself and been denied something that I deeply need. Meanwhile, he has no issues with masturbation. So it's not that his body doesn't work. We actually separated years ago, and this is a big part of why. Back then, he'd make huge promises, put in effort for a little while, and things would improve. But as soon as I stayed or got pregnant, everything went back to the same. And he knows he's killed any real intimacy between us. The thing is, he's my best friend, and I know he loves me, but I'm so angry. That's how he's brushed off my needs for so long. Now I'm at a point where I'm ready to walk away once again, and he's making big promises once again, yet there's no real action or change. I'm not as young as I used to be. I don't want to spend whatever years I have left in a completely sexless life. What do I do? Does this make me selfish? And then for clarity, she says, I never found signs of cheating or porn addiction or anything. Heartbreaking.
That's so sad. That's so sad. Because it's difficult, because I think a good partnership is that best friend. Let's, dual income and boss up together and like do all that. There's more to marriage than just sex, but it's recognizing how big of a piece that is. And I think it makes you appreciate those marriages that have kind of that connection, that best friend element and sex. God, those people are the lucky ones. Like they really are, because I think I've never had a really, really long-term relationship, but those that I have had were good in that sense. So I can't relate to it personally, but that's really a scary thought to have, especially I feel like I'm empathizing with the woman for some reason more. But one of the stats I did find too was that 72% of people in sexless marriages leave them, which I find positive, that finally take control and they leave, they exit the relationship, which is probably a higher stat than even abusive relationships. But
very much.
How long did it take them to get there? How long is she going to wait? It's tough.
Yeah. I think even if it's never happened to you, when you hear a story like that, it's not a stretch to put yourself in their shoes. I think you can envision that and immediately think how that would make you feel.
For me, it wouldn't be about the actual sex. It's the desire. It's someone wanting me. That's the piece that would crush me more than actually like a penis.
Well, and think about what we hear in sex work from clients all the time. Sometimes it's about the mileage. Sometimes it's about what'll she give me? What can I get? But 9 times out of 10, it's the connection. And to a guy, that means I want to feel wanted. I want to feel desired. And when I was in my sexless, live-in, I guess it was common law, whatever. It was about 8.5, 9 years. I was a sex worker at the time. And it was very mentally confusing to compartmentalize working in a non-full service sex work environment, being begged for extras, being begged for sex every day, offered money for sex every day, and going home to the person that I loved and being rejected on a constant basis. It was so confusing to me, because even though I could go to work and people desired me, it wasn't the desire I wanted, because I wanted it from this particular person. And sex work has enough compartmentalization problems. There's enough to digest after a really bad day or a tough month, or when times are slow, or even too busy and your body's getting worn down. Like, there's a lot to go into it. To add that little piece in, I never would have requested that on my bingo card. That's for damn sure. And it literally made it that much more confusing, because why is it your average Joe wants me more than you do? Like, make it make sense. And I tried to never throw my work at him. I never uttered those words. Maybe I should have. Maybe I should have said there's people every day begging to get in these pants that you're like, no, thank you. But it was a combination. It was the sex becomes one thing, but then when does a hug become a half hug? Or when does it used to be a smooch or like almost a makeout before you go to work become just like and off you go? And like it minimizes and minimizes and minimizes that when you go to work and get touched all over all the time. There were times where I'd go home and not want to be touched, but I still wanted to have intimate conversation, connection. I mean, I'm not even that cuddly, but fucking cuddle me at that point. Like, give me something to go off of. And yet, if we're talking about the asexual scenarios or how a household could work, there are a lot of women right now choosing to live with their best friends. There's a common thing going on right now. I've heard it so many times on influencers' videos lately that, like, do you know how much women would accomplish if they had a wife? Because the wife does so much shit in the household with all the emotional and physical, like, domestic labor. If you put two wives together, suddenly you are the power couple that Hollywood could never be. I think the same happens in lavender marriages, where a gay guy and a straight woman decide to marry for the tax savings, the child rearing, the convenience, and now you pretty much have a wife, because show me a gay guy that isn't. Like, it literally makes sense, even though I know that angers a lot of like cis straight men a lot because they're not thinking of it from a labor perspective. But if you're going to be in a romantic relationship and that person's going to take away the intimacy, you're actually better off living with your bestie or being like, hey, wifey, how's it going? And or finding that gay guy from high school, be like, you're 40, I'm 40, we're not married yet. Let's do this, because you're already without it. But I guarantee you'll have more intimacy because you're having the conversations, you're having the movie nights. You might even snuggle while you watch a scary flick. Like, you literally are having physical touch, conversation, communication, and accomplishment. Like, you're getting success points through all of these stages and eras of your relationship. And the tax savings, I mean, it all makes sense to me. No offense, guys, but y'all better step it up because the points are racking up on the other side, you know? So where does this balance? How do we fix this problem? And I don't think there's an easy fix. I think it's a lot of things that have to, a lot of pieces, a lot of therapy, and a lot of healing individually, as a couple, and as a society that we need to fix. And I do hope, in some respects, kind of like the world right now, just burn it all down and let's start again. Right. Because if we could do that, you and I single-handedly could fix this, because we see this. Like, we could implement the things that need to. I could rant all day. Let me read this last post. Okay. And then we'll wrap all things up, because it just, the punches in the gut. So this one's from a guy instead of the last one, which was from a girl. It's official. I'm in a sexless marriage now. How do people deal with this? Yesterday, my wife and I had what I guess is the final conversation about intimacy. That sentence just kills me. I really wanted to understand why our sex life had deteriorated, and her answer was blunt but honest. Sex just isn't her thing. She's not interested in it, and she doesn't want to have it anymore. She also admitted that for a long time, she was scared I'd leave or cheat. And so what she was giving me, she called duty sex. That's as bad as the pity sex of the last story. Hearing that completely crushed me. I told her I loved her and I wasn't going anywhere. But if sex is off the table, then I at least need more emotional and non-sexual intimacy. She said she'd try. I told her I won't initiate again. I won't hit at it. I won't push the issue. After more than 10 years together, I guess this is what it is now. A sexless marriage. And for the first time in 25 years, I cried in my car on the way to work this morning. Something just broke. It's going to get me. Something just broke inside me. It hit me that I'll probably never have sex with my wife again. She texted me later saying she loves me and she's sorry for making me sad. And I appreciate that, but I don't know what to do with this grief. How do people cope with losing the sexual side of their marriage when they still actually love their partner?
Ugh. Heartbreaking. I wish there's like an actual like answer. Like this is what you do. But like I don't know. It's such a snowball, and I don't know where it begins. Like you said, whether it's with sex education, maybe it's, listen, if you get married in a church, you do counseling before they marry you of how you're going to resolve conflict and all of those things. Sex should be a part of that. Communicating earlier. Maybe she's not interested in sex because she never expressed that she was having bad sex and what he could do different. There's probably so many things that could have been done along the way. Nonetheless, he is in that position. And it's absolutely heartbreaking. And like you said, of course, go see a sex worker for your human needs, but that doesn't fix anything in here. It's not, and I mean, unless you leave, but you love her. Like it's a clusterfuck of life. And listen, life is full of so many emotions. Those are emotions I don't ever want to feel. I empathize immensely with people that go through that.
I mean, it's such a big piece. It's like as if you were to be with someone for years and then all of a sudden they blindsided you 5 years into a marriage and go, I don't actually want kids. I thought you changed your mind. Or vice versa. You said you didn't want kids, but I thought you changed your mind. We get married, you'd see all the neighbors doing it, blah, blah, blah. There are people that choose not to be together because they love each other, but they just want different things. But when you don't talk about it, you never know. Imagine if this conversation had happened 10 years prior. Would they have walked down the aisle? It makes such an important difference. There are two comments here that I've screenshotted that I want to read because one of them defends the sexlessness and the other one just worries about this guy's health. So this comment is from a woman and she says, when sex ends for whatever reason, your marriage truly begins. If you're in marriage only for the sex, then you ain't got no marriage at all. Where's the love, the kindness, the friendship, the companionship? As you get older, sex does fade. Menopause for women, blood pressure for men. The number one factors are these as to why sex fades in a marriage. First of all, that's not true. You learn to give and receive intimacy in different ways. Good luck, buddy, navigating this part of your life. Clearly, you can't find joy.
Oh, listen, she had like a few points in there, like a few, but
and then lost me.
ruined them all because of the delivery and the bullshit. But that's the thing in what you read of his is he was asking for, fine, if I can't have the intercourse, can I still have, that emotional connection, which he wasn't like he was in need of. So no, it's not really, I don't agree with that woman at all.
At all, right? And so here's a guy who says another thing. And he's like, be prepared for your cortisol to run rampant through your system. It's going to wreak havoc on other aspects of your life. I'm warning you. This is a big ask, and you really need to re-examine your boundaries to determine if this is a situation you can actually abide with. If sex is important to her, then would she mind if you're meeting those needs elsewhere? That truly is the question. Such different perspectives.
Well, I mean, it's a never-ending topic. There's no clear advice or solution for any of it. Humans in relationships get messy, and sex is definitely always going to be one of those parts. I don't know where it kind of ends for anyone.
I think this is overall such a glaring flashlight or spotlight, I should say, on what happens when you actually remove a huge chunk of the human experience. And whether it's through religion, culture, all kinds of different reasons, sex is the first one everyone cuts out or denies in its existence. And like, I bet the church wouldn't moderate its pre-marriage counseling to talk too much about sex because the church is the first place to shun it. Like, it just creates not enough spaces for people to truly discover. And again, imagine if they had the scientific information and then had some of the skill set information, and through developing their own sexuality, including their confidence and their sexual satisfaction, therein went out into the world to find a mate. You would just go about mating so different, and you would end up in relationships that are different, or maybe you wouldn't stay so long in situations like this. I think your earlier comparison about abuse is so true, because the abuse is usually something like it takes so many tries to leave that it over long means it took you 7 years to leave this relationship, right? You could stay in silence or not even realize it for 7 years. And then suddenly you're at your kid's graduation going, holy shit, time flew. And you don't even realize, like the way this guy was like, well, I guess I'm in one. Like he had no idea before. It's jarring to me. And I think if we could solve that, we could solve so many of the world's problems, so many of the added triggers to the cortisol, that we could all have better health, overall health, longevity, live a little longer if we were more tuned in to our sexuality and therefore cohabitate and mate accordingly. I just think it's such a big human piece.
And I think just like overall health, if the messaging changes, like we all know, whether we do it or not, we all know we should walk this many steps a day or sweat for 20 minutes, or like there's things you should do per day. And if the narrative changed that sex was a part of that, and maybe it just means it's weekly. Like, listen, I took up more active masturbation recently because I read I should be, even though I'm actually not as interested in it. Like there is research that this is good for people. So if that messaging can change, that it should be happening weekly for your health, because mental, physical, emotional, all that health,
all of it,
maybe people would listen more, or it's something people grow up listening to that is just a part of their regular life.
Yeah. Imagine it was just like how, every Thursday you take out the garbage. Like it's just something you do. You wake up, you brush your teeth, you should eat your vegetables, you should do all the things. It would make people's lives and their experiences, their personalities, everything just so much more, I think, more empathetic on top of that, because you'd have more understanding. And you're right, for both men and women. Men, it's their prostates. Women, it's through menopause. We can lose tissue density in our vaginas. Yeah. We can lose all kinds of size and volume and wetness, tightness, all the things if we're not actively using the system. And if we keep our systems, your cardiovascular system, your pulmonary system, like your nervous system, all these things need to be healthy and active and balanced. Again, why do people cut out the jizz? Like, what are we talking about here? Make your life and your health and your body better. And if you're in a situation that isn't providing that, then there's a problem in that relationship, and it needs to be addressed, because it ain't going to fix itself.
I agree.
Well, we could talk about this for days. Yeah, for days and days and days. I hope those that listened learned a little bit, feel a little bit less alone if it's your situation. Don't be shy to reach out to us at any time. We love talking about these things. And I think both of us can be a good ear to bounce things off of. And don't be afraid to keep trying, because it may not be the same approach that's going to work, but the right information getting to the right ears can sometimes be the trigger that can make someone realize, I can't ignore this in my marriage anymore. I have to actually deal with it. And when in doubt, send us your story and we'll talk about it on the show if you let us, because it really makes people find community.
Yes, that part.
I love this. Well, I love this episode. This was such a heartfelt one. Thank you all for tuning in. Please drop down in the comments and let us know your thoughts on this topic. It is such a heavy one. Write us a novel if you feel so. But make sure you also like and subscribe. The channel is growing. We are almost at 2K subscribers, and I am completely gassed about that. And if you love this part, you're going to love Patreon even more. So hop on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/Muse On The Mic. Subscribe and join in for 3 times the fun, because you actually get 3 episodes a week from us. More Evelyn Raleigh in your face. I love it. Well, guys, thanks for this one. This was a great one, and we'll see you next week on Muse On The Mic.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.